from Syria. Well, joining us tonight is retired Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor. And Colonel, I want to start out with, we've got 1,000 troops in northern Syria. They've been there for 5 years. And for the life of me, I don't know what they're doing. And I don't know how either the balance of power in the region, in a country of 14.5 million people, to start with, 1,000 of our troops, as great as they are, I can't imagine them being the essential sine qua non of American diplomatic and military success in the region.
Well, Lou, you and the American people make an enormous majority when it comes to that question. Americans see no tangible, concrete strategic interest that we should have in Syria. And frankly, the longer we are there in small, fragile numbers, the greater the likelihood that we could be drawn into a conflict with any of the major players, Russia, Turkey, Iran, and we have no interest in going to war with them. And after all, Syria is ultimately a Russian client. We've never had any relationship with Damascus. So you're spot on.
And you know, as I look at what is going on here with the establishment, when you talk about Lindsey Graham and others demanding to know from the Pentagon and from the State Department and intelligence what the deal is, we know what the deal is. They've made their case. They've been there for 5 years in what has been an exercise in futility if their role was indeed to bring that war to a conclusion. And also it was an impossible mission with those numbers.
Well, Lou, it's too bad that Senator Graham and his colleagues from the swamp didn't demand briefings and ask hard questions before we went into all of these places.
Right.
They never seemed to care. Their only interest was in dragging us in and keeping us there. I suspect their donors are upset, but the American people are not.
And when we turn to the idea of withdrawal of troops, this president promised he would do exactly this. But we still have tens of thousands of troops around the world, concentrated certainly in South Korea, in Germany, and the UK principally. Your thoughts about whether or not we have, after from the Korean War forward, we're talking about almost 70 years of our troops there, to what end?
Well, you're spot on, Lou. It's been 75 years since the end of the Second World War. The conditions that resulted in the station of these forces no longer exist. And that was President Trump's great gift as a candidate. He simply said, look, what's the rationale for these things? Why are we still in NATO when the threat that gave NATO life no longer exists? Why are we in South Korea when North Korea is essentially circling the drain? And in Syria, he's done the same thing, except that in Syria, his withdrawal is particularly brilliant because he has now checkmated everybody in that country. By bringing the Turks into northern Syria, he has placed a barrier between the coast, between Lebanon and Iran, blocking Iranian influence from reaching Lebanon. He's put a Turkish army right in front of Russia. Lavrov, the foreign minister, was so shocked by the news, Lou, he was speechless. There has been no formal statement from the Russian foreign ministry. They don't know what to do because they promised a territorial integrity of Syria would not be changed, and now their dreams have been smashed.
And the two elements of this that are perhaps less clear, the fate of those ISIS fighters, the tens of thousands of them and their families, and of course 75% Sunnis in Turkey and Syria, the possibility of creating yet a new alliance and power center that could be fraught with potential danger for the region.
Well, that's right, and the president has now formally shifted responsibility to Mr. Erdogan in northern Syria for what remains of ISIS. And he's going to resettle these millions of refugees who are Sunni Muslim Arabs. And this is going to effectively divide Syria, there's no doubt about it, and ultimately it will expand Turkish power and influence. But if you look at the actors arrayed around Syria right now, that's actually in our interest. We're not interested in turning Syria into a platform for Iranian attack against Israel.
Absolutely. Colonel, we appreciate it. Thanks for being with us and sharing your insight.
Thank you, Lou.
Colonel Doug Macgregor. Appreciate it.